listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Zach Bechtold and Matt Franks. We hope you enjoyed today's podcast and check us out online at beardedtheologians.com. You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Matt Franks
and Zach Bechtold.
This week, we're going to kind of continue on our conversation from our last week's podcast about sacred meals. And with this being the holiday season, with all the kind of meals that you have going on in your life, you always enter into some of those don'ts in conversations. And some of those being, you don't talk religion, you don't talk politics. And for some people, you don't talk Dallas Cowboys or Green Bay Packers or Detroit Lions football during the important Thanksgiving games. But we wanted to kind of talk about kind of our reflection on that and just how to handle it as best we can. And so, Zach, as you think about, you've got some sacred holy meals coming up. How do you handle those meals, or how do you kind of take that in stride?
Well, it's always one of those fun things that we joke about, and we kind of have to laugh so we don't cry, because everybody has these moments in our family. We've got that uncle, we've got that brother or sister, we've got that family member that when we gather together at these sacred meals, they're going to be the ones that bring up the awkward subject. They're the ones that are going to want to talk politics, or going to want to talk what's going on in the church, or, it just those really things, tough conversations. And so, we make jokes and we laugh about it. And, but really these are serious, stressful conversations. And, one of the ways that I kind of approach these, especially since we've moved off, because, we're really kind of one of the only family members in our immediate family that have to travel back in. And so, we come and bring this outside context, and we're still trying to catch up and from the last time that we saw people. And when people start talking about football, I start throwing out days of spring training and when that's gonna come up to deflect those conversations. And so that's always fun. But when it gets down to the nitty gritty and the inevitable conversation about politics or what's going on in the church comes up over pie. Those are tough. And I think for me, my best practice is to stay out of it as much as possible, but really just listen, just hear what my family members have to say. And whether I agree or disagree, I try not to poke the bear, even as much fun as it can be sometimes to poke that bear. Because I do get to leave and come back to Montana. It's not always fair for everybody else that's sitting there. So this holiday season, this Thanksgiving and Christmas season, do your family a favor. If you're a bear poker, don't poke the bear. But if you bring those awkward conversations, if you're looking around your table and you're like, I don't know who the one that's going to bring the conversation up, it might be you. Just don't talk this Thanksgiving or Christmas if it's not about the Astros winning the World Series. You don't have anything to say.
Well, in my house, it depends on context.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm at my family's gathering, it's kind of fun because of the way we do it. I mean, we go at each other, and what's funny is we're going at each other even though we agree. Mm-hmm. Like we'll be saying the same thing, but it's by God, we're going to go at each other just because that's what we do. And my wife's family, my in-laws, we don't necessarily all agree. And I'm the perpetuator of that. I mean, I know that. And so I listen. I really take an attitude of listening and trying to not allow my difference in opinion to ruin a holiday. And some of it is, I know that I differ. And so I try never to bring that stuff up. And so, in those awkward conversation moments, I just have a hard time saying anything because I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I also, I don't have a problem calling out something that's not right, and I will. Like if there's not a truth being spoken, I'll call it out. And but if it's something that like is an opinion, I kind of just let it lie. But realize that that's come with years of learning of not doing it, and creating awkward space. And I'd much rather create a space of unity and jovial conversation of just, hey, we're glad we're together as a family, and let's eat cake.
Right.
And that's what's hard, is that the reality is that it's hard to get people to, if they're not on your side, to come to your side just by your argument. And I think that part of the way that we handle some of those things is modeling a lifestyle, saying, this is who we are and this is how we believe, and you're either with us or you're not, and that's okay if you're not, and just let it be. Think and let think is kind of a good Methodist term. And because you're going to have those difficult conversations, and they're never easy. But I think if we understand that, no matter how they feel about certain things, that they are a child of God and that you still love them, that maybe you share some chromosomal DNA with them, and that you are a part of them, whether you like it or not, and just smile and nod, or okay, that's interesting, and just roll with it, instead of creating a scene. And now, if you want to create a scene, man, go nuts and create a scene. Flip over a table.
Just know that you're not getting any Christmas presents if you do this at Thanksgiving.
But realize too that, and I think this goes with all of life, is that when we have a conversation, that there's consequences of the conversation, and that we have to be aware of how we say things or how we may believe will affect other people, and what that may mean for us, and how they turn around and reciprocate that.
Right.
And that's always a hard struggle. I don't think there's a great way or great advice, other than just saying, don't talk about those things, but they come up regardless of how
they do come up.
And
they're so ingrained in our culture, especially right now. Politics it's all we see. If you're clearly, you're on the internet because you're listening to this, and so we're flooded with it there. We're flooded with politics on the news. And then, if at the very least, if you live in even in the news, the church is in it right now with gun control and the tragedies that have happened in the last couple of weeks. It's there, and so it's hard to avoid.
Well, and maybe it's not a sense of avoidance, but a sense of, hey, there are better conversations to have. And
exactly.
And when we talk about justice, realize it's harder to sway family to think like you do, because they want you to be like them. And so realizing that maybe those aren't conversations that you start, but if they're initiated, engage in them, but engage in them cautiously, and knowing that you're not going to convince people otherwise to change their mind. Because remember, even Jesus struggled with that in his hometown when he went back and preached, and people were like, well, isn't this the carpenter's son? Whose authority does he have? And so I think that's something that we all struggle with, is that it's harder to go home, and that those conversations are difficult to have because we want people to be the same. And I mean, that's
right. Well, and that, that you bring up an important point, that when we do go home, our family still sees us as, little old Maddie, running around as a 6-year-old. That's what our family sees us as. Where in the context in which we live, even if that's in our hometown, we still have context there where people see us as an adult and a viable human being and a productive part of society. But when we go home for Thanksgiving and Christmas, there's that reversion back to, the good old days, when we were kids. And so it's hard to come out of that. And those, it's not stereotypes, that's not the word I want to use, but the just the viewpoint of our families. When I get with my older 2 brothers, there's this immediate going back to childhood. And
do they put Zach in the corner?
They do put me in a corner. They hog tie me, and it's just they're bigger than me. I have no chance. But there's just that, you kind of go back to that mentality, that time frame, and kind of those positions that we have in our family, which outside of the family, that's not a dynamic that I live into. I'm not in a place of authority at home, basically, is that it comes down to.
Yeah, because you just got a cat.
because I got a cat, right?
Um,
and so I think that's something to keep in mind too, of when we get back into those familiar places, especially if we're from off or even if we're in them all the time. Those are the things to be aware of, and how those dynamics is the word I was looking for, play into those conversations.
Yeah, and wouldn't you say that when we have those conversations, and if they're difficult and they're painful, to realize like the person across from the table from you or next to you is a child of God, and that we are to love first, and then and part of love is respect, and that's respect of their opinion, and hopefully they show respect of your opinion. So on Wednesday, I was a couple of church members and I went over to one of our shut-ins houses, and I was sitting there doing some work. I was clearing out a garden bed, and up walked these Jehovah's Witnesses. And what was funny is that I was talking about in our men's Bible study earlier that morning that I tend to be a person who attracts people who want to evangelize to me. I don't know what it is about me. Even in the collar, it's something that it still happens. And so
it's your face.
Yeah. But so I was sitting there, I was working in this garden, and these Jehovah's Witnesses came up and they introduced themselves. They were really nice. And then I introduced myself and I said, hi, I'm Matt Franks. I'm the United Methodist pastor here in town, and it's nice to meet you. And they tried to make their pitch, and I stopped them and I said, look, you can either, I'll let you talk, but I'm going to be working because this is important to me. This needs to get done. And I want to make sure that this lady's house is taken care of. Or we can sit down later and, and I was just kind of jovial and saying, hey, let's, if you want to talk, it has to be a conversation. I don't want to just listen to your spiel because your spiel is not going to convince me. And I know my spiel is not going to convince you, but let's have let's actually have a genuine conversation. And they didn't want any of that. And so they gave me their nice little pamphlet and they were off on their way. And one of the persons that was there with me, he just started laughing because he was at our Bible study that morning. He's like, yep, you're right. You are a sinner. And some of that is too, is that we really do have to realize is that, we are all children of God. And when we are in the midst of those crazy conversations at the table at Thanksgiving or Christmas or any other holiday, if you're a Festivus kind of person, to realize that, we are a child of God, and that we should love and respect one another, and just let some of that stuff just lie, because you're not gonna change their opinion at a Thanksgiving table. You may start some seeds, but it will never, you'll never have a life-changing moment. I think it may lead some foundations, but never just life-changing.
But can you truly have a Thanksgiving meal, a successful Thanksgiving meal, without somebody getting mad and throwing mashed potatoes at you? I mean,
well, it would take lots of liquor.
No, and Matt's exactly right. It's coming down to love and respect, and how we approach these, because we're not. You're not going in and going to change anybody's mind. So don't have the argument.
Don't have the argument, but realize this, we love because God first loved us.
That's right.
And so I think if we come in with an attitude or approach of love, then when those difficult conversations you either move on or you let them make their peace, and then you can say, how about that, Packers? Or, man, this is good pie.
That's right.
Or you start just going into Scrubs quotes and doing Scrubs montages for the entire meal.
Well, and so that's the thing. That's what we want to encourage you all to do as you gather at these sacred meals and sacred tables over the Thanksgiving and Christmas season. Don't poke the bear. Let a sleeping dog lie. Are there some other cheesy sayings I can throw in there? But just approach your family in these meals with a level of respect and love that you're not going to engage in the argumentative side of these conversations, but you're going to approach them with love, and let your family speak, and let these and just be present in that. But be mindful and be intentional about not having the argument, but having the conversation. I think you'll find that these meals will be even more life-giving and enjoyable this year and into the future when we approach these conversations with love and dignity and grace. And so we want to encourage you to do that. We also want to encourage you to eat tons and tons of turkey and mashed potatoes and take a nap and rest, because it is well deserved. We appreciate all of you. We're thankful for you listening to the podcast, for reading the blogs. We've got a wonderful, a really cool thing coming up this week of Thanksgiving where we won't have a podcast because it is Thanksgiving, but we've got 4 or 5 blogs coming out every day this week. One every day this week, or the week of Thanksgiving. And they're going to be really cool. We've got a lot of really neat voices there, some new people that have written for us and some old ones coming back. So please check those out daily. Go to beardedtheologians.com. Get your Christmas present stocking stuffer mugs, t-shirts and stickers and everything in between. Those help us have a nice Bearded Theologians Christmas and continues to support the podcast. You can download us on all the social medias, and we want to have a conversation with you. If you have a fun experience over Thanksgiving and enter into these conversations and they turn out differently than they have in the past, man, let us know. We think that's we'd love just to hear your experience over these sacred meals. For the Bearded Theologians, I'm Zach Bechtold.
I'm Matt Franks.
Thanks for checking us out.
Thank you for listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast. We hope you've enjoyed listening, and we hope that you share our content online through Facebook and social media, and we hope that you check out our Beardcast store at beardedtheologians.com and pick up some great Bearded Theologians gear. We hope you have a good day.